Greetings, and welcome back to the channel Cril Inspires. I am your host, Cril, author of the interview podcast Guidebook, Creating a Successful Interview Podcast, a how-to guide. And I got an announcement to make early in this video. If you have been following me on my social media pages via Instagram, Facebook, or Twitter, you would see that yesterday I made an announcement that my ebook is now available for free, but only for a limited time. So I want to let you all know here that you can now download a PDF copy of my ebook, Creating a Successful Interview Podcast, a how-to guide, for free, right, on my website. But it will only be available for free download till the end of the month. So you got some days, but if I'm you, I would encourage you to get to it as soon as possible. So the link will be in the description of this video, but it's also on my website, outtheboxmedia.com, under the tab ebook. Right now, if you're on a desktop computer, you'll be able to see the tab. I'm working to get it on the phone devices, but either way, whether you're on a phone or not, if you go to the link in the description of this video, you'll be able to access it. All you have to do is subscribe to the Cril Inspires email list so that we can keep you updated with all things related to this book and guides in relation to helping you to develop and create a successful interview podcast. All right. So go ahead and head over there as soon as you can. And let me know how you feel about the information in the book, whether you've been able to utilize some of the information and how it is translating for you as someone on your interview podcast journey. Right. So, yeah, definitely go get that. That is my gift to you for this month of March. And we'll keep connected. All right. So the next thing today, I want to jump right into it, is the topic of the day. Today's topic is going to be dealing with Guide 10 of my book. And this is titled Intentionally Listening, right? The importance of intentionally listening. So let's talk about that, right? We talked about, in my previous videos, I've talked about composing great questions and why it's a big deal, right? But listening while your guest is speaking is extremely important as well. And why is that, right? So listening helps you to be fully in tune with your guest responses, and it puts you also in a great position as the host to ask successful follow-up questions, right? So because you're in tuned while you're listening, you're hearing back all of the great responses that your guest is giving, and it puts you in a position to say, oh, I didn't even think about asking that question, but since you said that, I'm going to follow up with this question. You get what I'm saying? So it is really important to listen while your guest is speaking back to you, right? So right after you ask that question, you want to listen, right? And you don't want to just haphazardly listen. You want to be fully in tune, because if you haphazardly listen, you can miss some key things that can yield a great follow-up question and really just help you to get a better understanding of your guest perspective and their personality and just their understanding of things. You can learn a lot from just listening back to your guest after you ask your interview questions. All right. And you want to do this as much as possible throughout the interview. Okay. Another thing that listening helps to eliminate is the mistake of you asking the same question again, which in turn saves you more time so that you can ask a different question right down the line. So how many times have you been in an interview? And I'll even put myself in the position. Like, I've been in interviews where I've made the mistake, and because I wasn't intentionally listening throughout the interview, I made the mistake and asked the same question again. And you know what I heard from the guests? Well, like I said earlier, that was their response. Well, like I said earlier, or like I had mentioned earlier, right? Anytime a guest has to start a response with those lines, like I said earlier, that shows that you weren't listening, and it does make you look a bit unprofessional. Okay? So that's another reason why it's very important to listen back when you ask a question to your guest. Now, I want to be clear on what I mean by asking the same question again. You may be in a situation where your guest is responding to a question and you're not intentionally listening. But during the response to that question, they're actually answering another question that you had planned to ask later on in the interview. So if you are not intentionally listening and you miss the answer to that upcoming question, and then you go ahead and ask that question again, you will then get the response likely from the guest, like I said earlier. So you don't necessarily have to have asked the question before. You just have to miss the answer to the question. Now, I know how difficult this can be at times, right? It's one of the things that you sometimes overlook as a host of an interview podcast show. You know, you think, okay, I got my questions together. That's the hardest part, right? All I got to do is get these questions out and listen, right? But a lot of times, as well as you may prepare for the interview with your questions, a lot of times you slip up when it comes time to listen back to the guest. Because let's face it, if you are a one-man podcast host, meaning you're doing the production, you're filming, you're asking the questions, right? You're dealing with the technical challenges that may come up during the interview. Like, this is the case for a lot of people. This could be a big challenge for you, right? And this could be an easy way that you end up slipping up during the time when you should be intentionally listening back to your guest response. So I know how difficult it could be to be distracted. So if you find yourself in a position where you become distracted for whatever reason, maybe you have to focus on the camera while your guest is responding, or maybe you gotta edit a question that you know you're gonna ask later on. These things can happen, but if you find yourself in that situation, I always encourage what I call a 5-second rule, right? So anytime you feel like you may be distracted, always try to make that distraction time only happen within the first 5 seconds immediately after you ask the question. So that is the first 5 seconds of the guest response. You try your best. I know a lot of times you can't plan for distractions, but there are some distractions that we may find out about prior to our next question, right? Or in the moment, and you can plan to handle those distractions like within the first 5 asking the question. Now, if those distractions require you to spend more time fixing those distractions than those 5 seconds at the beginning of the guest response, then you may need to pause the interview altogether and resume the interview. Now, this makes more sense to do if you are doing a pre-recorded interview, right? And it's not being done live and it's being streamed for the public to hear in real time, right? If it's not that case, then you can always ask your guest, hey, I just need 5 minutes to fix this and I will come back. Now, the challenge that you risk in that situation is that, hey, the guest may not even be able to give you that 5 minutes, right? And it may shorten your interview greatly. So, that could also be a challenge. But if you have to, see if you can pause for a little bit of time so that you can address the distraction and get back to it, right? But if it's not one of those cases and the distractions are not like very time consuming, then use the 5-second rule to fix that distraction and then come right back to the interview. Okay? And listen, intentionally listen. Do not go astray, right? It is very important. The other thing I want to tell you about intentionally listening that is also important is that when you intentionally listen throughout the interview, you show your guests that you care and have respect for what they say, and in turn, they will appreciate this and the chemistry will grow during the interview, right? The guest wants to know that you are taking his responses seriously. When the guest sees that, they develop a better respect and a better chemistry with you during the interview. So keep that in mind with regards to this guide. It is very important to intentionally listen during the time or the moment that your guest is responding to your question, because it keeps you fully in tune and it creates an opportunity for follow-up questions and also develops respect and better chemistry with you and your guests. Thank you for tuning in. I will catch you on the next video. Remember to like and subscribe to the channel if you have not yet. And I will see y'all on the next video. You can also follow me on my social media pages, which is Cril Inspires on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Thank you again, and much success on your interview podcast journey. Take it easy.